The Tycoon, The Fall, and Karma's Grasp. Before you dive into this harrowing tale of betrayal, greed, and a shocking act of violence, hit that subscribe button. And tell us in the comments, what's the most unforgivable act of betrayal you've ever witnessed? Power, wealth, and prestige. People often believe these are the pillars of a perfect life. Yet behind the gilded doors of an extravagant Mayfair penthouse in London, a dark secret festered. A man, consumed by greed and lust, found himself at the heart of an intricate web of lies. He had a devoted, pregnant wife and a mistress who seduced him with promises of even greater riches and passion. But in this tale of shocking twists, illusions of grandeur crumble into a nightmare. Prepare to discover how a single moment, an act of brutal violence, would forever seal their destinies. Leo Hamilton was a man of lavish appetites. From an early age, he believed he was destined for greatness. Growing up in Hackney, he saw the skyscrapers of Canary Wharf loom over him whenever his father took him to the city. He would stare at the imposing buildings, the rhythm of black cabs, and the sharp suits worn by finance magnates emerging from sleek black SUVs. He swore that one day he too would live among them as an equal, or surpass them as a king. A graduate of the London School of Economics, Leo's ambitions gleamed brighter than a diamond-encrusted Rolex. With cunning and charm, he launched a series of property ventures, and before long, newspapers like the Financial Times hailed him as one of London's youngest millionaires. He began acquiring penthouse apartments and rubbing shoulders with celebrities at exclusive gatherings in the grand ballrooms of the Dorchester. He appeared on the covers of local magazines, smiling for the cameras, presenting himself as the epitome of success and an icon of self-made wealth. But behind the dazzling facade, shadows lurked. Leo wasn't content with mere financial prosperity. Beneath that polished exterior, he harbored a hunger for thrills that money alone couldn't satiate. It was a hunger for excitement, control, and power over people. At every turn, he sought proof that the world belonged to him, that no rule applied, no moral limit mattered. It was around this time that he met Genevieve, Jen Morgan, a sweet and resolute woman of modest background, employed at a legal consulting firm. Jen's quiet demeanor and unwavering loyalty fascinated Leo. She wasn't simply dazzled by wealth. She respected intelligence, kindness, and sincerity. Leo relished the challenge of winning her heart, for she was the rare person in his orbit who cared about something more than his money. After a whirlwind romance, they married in a sumptuous ceremony, covered in the society pages of Tatler. People saw it as a fairy tale wedding, a humble, kind woman capturing the heart of the city's emerging tycoon. However, even as he spoke his vows, a whisper of that old hunger lurked in the back of his mind. He told himself that Jen's goodness would stabilize him, that her warmth would quell the tempest in his soul. For a time, it worked. Their marriage became the talk of social circles, and when Jen announced her pregnancy, it was hailed as further proof that the Hamilton empire would endure for generations. Still, in the darker corners of his being, Leo resented that sense of stability. Amidst baby showers and antenatal classes, an itch gnawed at him. An itch that craved more excitement, more danger, more conquests. He convinced himself he deserved it. He was Leo Hamilton, limitless, unstoppable. He refused to be bound by the mundane or constrained by loyalty, and thus the stage was set as a hidden storm brewed. No one, except Leo, could see the clouds forming, and even he refused to acknowledge them. Yet, when they broke, everything he held dear, his immaculate image, his pregnant wife, their unborn child, would be at risk. If only he could prevent his own hands from beckoning those very clouds to darken his world. What do you think Leo's secret desires will lead him to do? And what's the most dangerous temptation you've ever witnessed someone succumb to? Share your thoughts below. Shortly after Jen's pregnancy announcement, Leo's property empire reached new heights. Eager investors from firms like HSBC and Barclays lined up to partner with him on ambitious new developments across London. Meetings buzzed with deals that multiplied his net worth overnight. Jen, radiant with maternal happiness, took pride in these achievements, envisioning a secure, affluent life for their child. But during a networking event, Leo crossed paths with a woman who would become the instrument of his downfall. Bianca Moretti. She was a high-end interior designer, rumored to have worked with celebrities, rumored to have sampled everything from stardom to the darker corners of the city's nightlife. Leo first noticed her during a property launch. She was mesmerizing. Long, dark hair, eyes that sparkled with a myriad of secrets, and an aura of confident sensuality. She was draped in a form-fitting gown that left little to the imagination, the kind of figure that turned heads across a room. When they were introduced, Bianca's voice was a low purr. "I've heard so much about you, Mr. Hamilton. It's an honor to finally meet the city's rising king." Her lips curved into a flirtatious smile that denoted no genuine respect. Leo should have walked away. He shouldn't have paid attention to the tingle down his spine. Yet he found himself fascinated. He offered a polite handshake. "Please, call me Leo. Titles can be so tiresome." Another wide smile, the one that had convinced powerful men to invest millions in his projects, but Bianca seemed unimpressed by his usual bravado. She leaned forward, allowing him a subtle whiff of her floral perfume. "I'd love to discuss my design ideas for your latest penthouse development in Westminster," she purred, her eyes narrowing. Who better to collaborate with than the city's most notable developer? Leo felt intoxicated by her presence. There was something so brazenly audacious about her. She defied the social norms that demanded an appearance of politeness. She seemed to speak her mind with bold flirtation, unafraid of the consequences. In that moment, the gravity of his wife's pregnancy, his impending fatherhood, and the future he was building became fleeting concerns. All that mattered was the pulse he felt beating, not in his chest, but in the part of him that craved control, power, and sin. They scheduled a follow-up meeting under the guise of interior design. It wasn't long before the boundaries blurred. One night, working late over blueprints and color palettes, they ended up in each other's arms against the panoramic windows of Leo's luxurious office. He told himself it was a fleeting mistake, a momentary lapse. But once that door opened, it proved impossible to close. Bianca offered a thrilling alternative to the conventional life he had stumbled into. She vexed him, flattered him, then rejected him, making him chase her. That chase, with its secrecy and danger, became addictive. He always made sure to call Jen, telling her he'd be working late or stuck in emergency meetings. Guilt occasionally assailed him, especially when Jen joyfully described feeling the baby's kicks. Still, the hunger was stronger. Bianca was the personification of all things taboo. Within a few weeks, they formed an unholy alliance that threatened to unravel everything he had built: his marriage, his public image, even his thriving empire. But the worst was yet to come. What dark turn do you think Bianca's influence will take? And what's the most chilling example of manipulation you've ever encountered in a story? Share your thoughts below. A simple romance, albeit a devastating betrayal, was just the tip of the iceberg. The true tragedy took shape the moment Bianca began to suggest that Leo could be so much more, if only he could free himself from the burdens of parenthood and the obligations that tied him down. She stroked his ego, inflated his sense of invincibility, and planted the seeds of a plan so diabolical that even he, in his twisted pursuit of thrills, couldn't have anticipated the ramifications. In the silent corridors of the Savoy Hotel, where they occasionally met to avoid detection, Bianca's persuasive whispers carried the weight of an unstoppable force. She started slowly. Why should a child inherit your empire if they are only going to weigh you down? Then, she escalated. Imagine being unleashed from obligations. Think of the global expansion your business could achieve. She presented herself as the only woman who truly understood his thirst for ambition. Leo listened, mesmerized. Part of him recoiled at the notion of discarding his wife, especially with an unborn child in the picture. However, Bianca cleverly peeled away his layers of resistance. She claimed that if Jen had the baby, public perception would paint Leo as a family man, complicating his relationship with Bianca. Furthermore, the child would demand his time, overshadowing the thrill of new conquests and unstoppable ventures. Her final manipulation came in the form of a question. You're a winner, Leo. When have you ever let anyone tie you down? The words latched onto the rotting pride in his chest. She painted Jen as a burden, albeit gently, always circling back to the promise of a decadent life, unburdened by fatherhood. Initially, the suggestion that he would do something drastic like divorce Jen or find a way to remove her from the picture made Leo wince. However, the idea kept churning in his mind. The more he fed that monstrous curiosity, the more it grew. Each night he tossed and turned, looking at Jen's peaceful face, trying to recall the purity that once attracted him to her. Then he would remember Bianca's promise, an open world filled with lust, wealth, and unlimited freedom. The craving for that life only intensified. Weeks blurred into months. Jen's belly swelled further. Baby preparations consumed her day. Doctor's visits, antenatal yoga, nursery decorating. Leo feigned enthusiasm, occasionally attending appointments to maintain appearances. In truth, every step of progress made him feel more trapped. Each time Jen spoke of baby names or future family holidays, Leo's mind drifted to Bianca, her seductive glances, her dangerously thrilling propositions. Finally, Bianca crossed the ultimate line. What if, she proposed one night, your wife was simply no longer around? No child to tie you down? No wife clinging to your bank account? Life could resume as the unstoppable force you are. We could travel Europe, Asia, take the London property game global. Leo stared at her, an internal war raging. He was no killer, nor had he ever contemplated it. But her words held an unnerving logic, especially under the veil of desire and ambition. Still, the notion was abominable. He stood to leave, asserting that she was crossing a line he couldn't uncross. However, Bianca pressed. She reminded him how quickly the media would turn on him if a messy divorce ensued, how child support and alimony could cripple his fortune. Tabloids would pry into his private life, damaging potential partnerships. She insisted there were ways to arrange a subtle, undetectable accident. Stairs, she whispered, are notoriously dangerous. She painted a dark scenario that hammered the final nail into his reservations. It would appear a tragic slip, especially in her pregnant state. He left that meeting disturbed, intoxicated by the possibility. All the way home, he grappled with the moral line he was dancing on. He told himself he would never do it. But the next time he saw Bianca, she swayed him otherwise. Her final words that night sealed the fate of more than one life. You'll be unstoppable once you're free. A fateful Tuesday arrived, just after Jen entered her 7th month of pregnancy. Leo returned home late, as had become his habit. Jen waited for him with a worried expression, gently rubbing her belly. She asked him if everything was all right, if business was stressing him, if there was anything she could do. He offered vague reassurances, half smiles, blaming heavy investor demands. But in that moment, seeing her vulnerability, he felt a pang of fear. Could he really go through with Bianca's twisted plan? He looked at the winding helical staircase, a modern architectural marvel he had chosen for their penthouse. It was elegant, but from the top floor to the bottom, a long, dangerous fall. Leo stood there for a moment, physically trembling at the thought. He couldn't do it. He would find another solution. Bianca, however, was determined. Over the next few days, she showed him photographs of properties on remote islands they could buy together, exotic cars they could enjoy. Always the same refrain. All of this can be ours, once you're free. Slowly, she eroded his last defenses, appealing to every facet of his ego and greed. The day of the accident took shape with chilling precision. It began like any other morning. Jen woke early, following her antenatal routine. Leo feigned absorption in a phone call, watching her out of the corner of his eye. He had chosen a day when household staff were minimal, with only a new cleaner scheduled to arrive later that afternoon. A cleaner who wouldn't notice any suspicious presence or unusual arrangements. When Jen finished her breakfast, Leo took her hand. "Let's go upstairs," he suggested, feigning a warm smile. "We haven't spent enough time together lately. I'd like to discuss the baby's room." Surprised by his sudden interest, Jen's face lit up. She agreed, and with a soft glow of happiness in her eyes, she followed him. They ascended the curving steps leading up from the lounge, the drop below them lined with polished marble. Jen was a little slow, given her pregnancy, and Leo's heart pounded in his chest. Each step felt like a countdown to a point of no return. He paused near the top. For a brief second, he remembered their wedding vows, the day he slipped the ring onto her finger, the kisses they'd shared at the altar, and the tears of joy in her eyes when she first told him she was pregnant. Could he truly extinguish that life? But his hesitation vanished as he pictured Bianca's triumphant smile. He saw the imagined future of a global empire, free from what he had allowed himself to label as burdens. He heard that selfish voice, whispering that his destiny was more important than his conscience. Jen had reached the final step when he acted. He used his shoulder to shove her forcefully. She let out a piercing scream, her arms flailing as she tried to stabilize herself against the elegant banister. Her eyes, wide with terror, locked onto his for the briefest of moments. Disbelief, heartbreak, betrayal etched on her face. Then she tumbled backward. The thud reverberated through the penthouse, Jen's body falling, the thunderous impacts as she hit the steps. When she reached the bottom, her pregnant belly took a final impact, and a pained moan escaped her lips. It was the kind of sound that imprints itself on the mind, a cry torn between agony and desperate hope. Leo stood at the top, paralyzed. A wave of nausea and panic washed over him. Had he truly just done that? The enormity of his act choked him, and in his mind, he saw Bianca smiling. He scrambled down the stairs, almost slipping. Jen was unconscious, her breathing shallow, blood trickling from the side of her mouth. Leo's heart hammered, and for a moment he contemplated calling an ambulance, saving her. But then came the unstoppable wave of rationalization. No, it was supposed to look like an accident. No one should suspect anything. Regaining what composure he could, he dialed 999 with trembling fingers. He told the operator his pregnant wife had fallen down the stairs, his voice breaking with rehearsed panic. Then, in the moments of waiting before help arrived, he whispered to himself, "Calm down. Calm down." In that instant, he believed he had sealed his fate as unstoppable, ready to enter a life with Bianca. Unbeknownst to him, destiny was already weaving a web of retribution that would ensnare him in unimaginable ways. What do you think the consequences of Leo's horrific act will be? What's the most chilling act of karma you've ever heard of, where someone received their just desserts? Share your thoughts below. An ambulance wailed through the streets, pulling up to the opulent building. Paramedics rushed in, finding Jen in a fragile state. Her pulse was weak, but she clung to life. With practiced efficiency, they loaded her onto a stretcher, hurrying to get mother and unborn child to the hospital. Leo played the frantic husband, weaving an elaborate lie. "She must have slipped," he explained. "Always so careful, but accidents happen." At the hospital, the medical team sprang into action. An emergency obstetrician was called. The situation was grave. Jen was unresponsive, and the baby was at risk. Hours blurred in a whirlwind of frantic medical procedures. Leo roamed the waiting room, maintaining the facade of a worried husband. Occasionally, staff or acquaintances who recognized him offered sympathy. He nodded grimly, swallowing the rising guilt and the trembling horror of what he had done. Meanwhile, Bianca sent him text messages laced with sinister encouragement. "Almost there. Stay strong." Finally, a doctor emerged, aggravated fatigue etched on her features. "We've managed to save your wife and the baby," she said. "But she's in a coma. We don't know if or when she'll wake up. The baby is in the neonatal intensive care unit, NICU. She was born prematurely, but she's stable. We'll do everything we can." Leo's breath hitched. He had planned for Jen's life to end that day, along with the baby's. Yet, by some miracle, both were alive. Though barely. Now, a wave of conflicting emotions hit him. Relief, dread, guilt. What if she wakes up and remembers everything? The chilling possibility unfurled. Although he'd told the staff it was an accident, if Jen woke up, she could shatter his lies with a single word of truth. Bianca's messages kept coming. "You have to take care of this, Leo. If she wakes up, everything is on the line for both of us. Think of the scandal, the lawsuits. Don't forget, attempted murder is a crime that could bury you alive." The mention of attempted murder almost made Leo vomit. He ended the call abruptly, a twisted nausea churning in his stomach. Suddenly, the possibility of getting Bianca into legal trouble offered him the slightest flicker of satisfaction. She had encouraged him, manipulated him. Could he turn on her if it came to it? But no. She had planned too well, leaving minimal evidence of her involvement. If the truth came out, Bianca would simply claim lame ignorance, painting herself as the unwitting mistress. He would be the one to rot in a cell. However, Bianca's hunger for power wasn't limited to controlling Leo. She also had her eyes on his business. Over the next few weeks, she approached certain investors, laying the groundwork to position herself within the empire should Jen officially exit the scene. She whispered in the ears of property magnates. She dined with bankers in opulent restaurants, weaving a narrative that Leo was having personal troubles and might transfer managerial control. All the while, she kept him firmly on a leash, reminding him that if he didn't finish what he'd started, she would leave him. And leave him to face the consequences alone. In a twisted sense, Bianca was living her dream scenario. She had the powerful man, the potential to step into a luxurious life, and reveled in her newfound influence. The only obstacle was a comatose wife clinging to life. Day by day, Bianca incited him. "Any news from the doctors?" she'd ask, her voice dripping with false concern. Leo felt the walls closing in on him. He spent more nights at the hospital, pacing the sterile corridors, looking at Jen's motionless form, listening to the beeping monitors that marked each second ticking towards a reckoning. Nurses quietly commented on his vigilant presence, praising him as a devoted husband. But inside, he trembled. Sooner or later, he would have to make a decision. Pray that Jen never woke up, or do something unspeakable to ensure she never did. Leo's carefully constructed lies began to unravel. Detectives from the Metropolitan Police stepped in, investigating the accident as a routine matter. Their questions were courteously relentless. Were you at home when your wife fell? Did she call for help before you dialed 999? Why was no staff around? Leo responded with the composure of a seasoned businessman, adept at corporate negotiations, but these were not gullible investors. The lead detective, Detective Inspector Carmichael, possessed an uncanny ability to read people's micro-expressions. Each time they questioned Leo, Carmichael's piercing gaze drilled into him, searching for inconsistencies. Meanwhile, they sought to speak with Jen's immediate family, her elderly parents, who lived in a quiet suburb north of London. The parents were devastated, distrustful. They had never quite approved of Leo, seeing him as too shrewd. Now, their beloved daughter lay in a coma, and they demanded answers. Compounding the pressure, the new cleaner hired shortly before the incident made a misstep when speaking with authorities. She recalled hearing an unusual argument upstairs before the fall. Although she couldn't confirm specific details, she mentioned a raised male voice, followed by a loud thud. That detail pricked the detective's ear. Leo, of course, denied any argument. It must have been the television, he insisted, but the seeds of doubt were planted in Carmichael's mind. Meanwhile, Jen's condition stabilized, though she remained in a coma. Doctors couldn't predict if or when she would wake. The baby, named Lily by Jen's parents, gained strength in the NICU. Leo found himself inadvertently drawn to the newborn's cot, gazing at the tiny, fragile being. Guilt gnawed at him. This child was supposed to have died with her mother, according to his monstrous plan. Yet there she was, fighting for life with every breath. He felt conflicting waves of protectiveness and dread. Meanwhile, Bianca grew impatient. "Why is it taking so long?" she demanded in whispered phone calls. "I'm tired of waiting. If she doesn't die on her own, do something about it. Or do you want to risk her waking up and telling everyone what you did?" Their discussions turned grim. She suggested bribing a nurse or tampering with medical equipment. Leo recoiled, but she pressed. "You started this, Leo. You have to finish it." Her manipulative prowess knew no bounds. She threatened to expose his involvement if he backed out. He was cornered. However, cracks began to appear in the sinister alliance. The more Bianca pushed, the more Leo realized she was the true cancer in his life, feeding his worst impulses. A sliver of reason tried to reassert itself in his conscience. He remembered the day he married Jen, the joy on her face. He pictured her now, fighting for survival in that hospital bed, his own flesh and blood in the NICU. He had fallen so low as to orchestrate murder in the name of unbridled ambition and lust. But fear overshadowed morality. If Jen woke up, his life would be shattered. So he let Bianca's words linger in his mind, a foul influence pushing him towards unspeakable acts. Yet, fate was about to intervene in unexpected ways, paving the path for a reckoning neither he nor Bianca foresaw. How do you think karma will finally catch up to Leo and Bianca? And what's the most satisfying moment of justice you've ever witnessed, in real life or fiction? Share your thoughts below. One night, as Leo walked towards Jen's room, a nurse informed him that someone was already there. He found an elderly, silver-haired woman, dressed in a simple black coat, sitting by Jen's bedside, holding her limp hand. The woman's presence exuded a serene resolve, as if she had weathered life's storms and emerged anchored. Leo recognized her as Sister Margaret, a nun who had once visited one of his charity fundraisers. Jen must have known her from her volunteer work. Confusion mingled with annoyance. He didn't want strangers meddling in this carefully managed scenario. Sister Margaret looked up, meeting Leo's eyes. "I've come to pray for Genevieve," she said softly. "Your wife did so much good for the homeless shelters. She never sought recognition or praise. Her goodness simply overflowed." Leo forced a smile. "Yes, of course. She's a wonderful person." The words tasted bitter with hypocrisy. The nun nodded, turning her gaze back to Jen's comatose form. She gently stroked Jen's hand. "You know, sometimes the darkest nights give birth to the brightest dawns. Genevieve has a strong spirit. I believe she'll wake when the time is right." A knot formed in Leo's stomach. He struggled to maintain his composure. "I appreciate your optimism. We can only hope." Inside, panic churned. The last thing he wanted was for her to wake, but the nun's unwavering faith gnawed at him, reminding him of moral truths he had chosen to ignore. Then, Sister Margaret looked at Leo, her eyes filled with a quiet intensity. "No one knows what truly happened that day. But rest assured, no sin goes unnoticed. Sometimes the hidden corners of our hearts betray us." Her words, though softly spoken, hit him like a hammer. He felt exposed, as if she looked directly into the darkness he was hiding. For a moment, he was speechless. The nun rose, patted Jen's hand, and then headed towards the door. Before leaving, she paused beside Leo. "If you ever need to talk, to seek a way out of your suffering, I am here. The Church of the Heavenly Saints is always open." Leo nodded stiffly, swallowing hard. The door closed softly behind her, leaving him alone with Jen's shallow breaths and the mechanical hum of the hospital equipment. He felt as if Sister Margaret's words were a prophecy of doom. He had never believed in spiritual matters, always relying on money, cunning, and worldly power, but a sense of foreboding now clung to him like a suffocating shroud. Perhaps it was paranoia, but he felt something larger than himself stirring, a karmic wave ready to crash over him. In the days following Sister Margaret's visit, Leo found himself increasingly isolated. While Bianca roamed luxury property circles forging new connections, he was forced to maintain appearances at the hospital, dealing with detectives, worried relatives, and the watchful eyes of the media. Rumors circulated that Jen was improving, though still in a coma. Medical staff noted slight fluctuations in her brain activity, an encouraging sign that she might regain consciousness. Each update infuriated Bianca. She demanded progress from Leo, progress that meant ensuring Jen never spoke again. He tried to appease her, saying they should wait for a better opportunity. But internally, he was paralyzed, grappling with the moral abyss before him. Could he kill Jen again, right there in the hospital? Could he risk tampering with IV lines or medication? That kind of malevolence felt even more horrific than the accidental push. Bianca was quick to remind him of the consequences. She sent him abrupt, confrontational text messages. "I've invested too much to see you walk away now. We're in this together. Don't forget." Each message arrived like a whip, a reminder that he was tethered to her malignant ambition. One afternoon, Bianca cornered him at his penthouse. She let herself in with the key he'd foolishly given her months earlier. "You're lagging," she accused, standing in the lounge where the monstrous act had begun. "And lagging is dangerous." She sauntered closer, her dress clinging to her figure, her eyes gleaming with a toxic mix of lust and fury. "I haven't come this far to watch you lose your nerve." Leo threw his jacket onto a chair and ran a hand over his face. "There are detectives sniffing around. I can't just waltz into the hospital and do something suspicious." "Then find another way," Bianca hissed. "Stop her from waking up. Bribe a doctor. Tamper with her medication. You have money. Use it." He recoiled, disgust churning in his stomach. "You think everything is so simple? People aren't just pawns on a board for you to move." She sneered, rolling her eyes. "You're a coward. That's why you'll lose. If you don't finish this, I'll protect myself. I won't go down for your incompetence." A savage rage ignited in him. "Incompetence? You're the one who—" He cut himself off, aware of the cameras in the hallway. But the implication was clear. She was the mastermind who urged him to commit the initial act of violence. Now, with everything collapsing, she was laying the blame squarely on him. Nevertheless, Bianca's threat was real. If cornered, she could cut a deal with authorities, fully implicating him in exchange for her own immunity. He saw no easy way out. The only path seemed to be the very crime he had come to abhor. That night, tormented by nightmares, Leo realized he was living in a no-man's land, between moral damnation and legal ruin. If he didn't silence Jen, he risked prison. If he tried to kill her again, he might succeed, but he would lose his soul completely. In his sleep, he saw Jen's spectral figure holding baby Lily, their eyes filled with pain and betrayal. He woke up drenched in sweat, a silent scream trapped in his throat. Days passed, and Jen held on, despite her precarious condition. The infection receded, and her vital signs slowly improved. Nurses whispered about a miraculous recovery. Leo was both relieved and terrified. He visited Lily in the NICU more frequently, drawn to the fragile infant. Sometimes, he would gently lay a hand on the glass incubator, feeling a curious bond with the child he had once intended to eliminate. One particularly tense afternoon, as he hovered near Lily, a nurse approached. "She's a fighter, your daughter. Though she was born prematurely, she's making remarkable progress. You should be proud." "Yes," he murmured, forcing a weak smile. But inside, guilt gnawed at him. "I don't deserve her," he thought. Later, he wandered to Jen's room, finding it unusually quiet. A single nurse adjusted equipment, then left him alone. She lay there, the lines of her face softened, her breathing more stable. Carefully, he took her hand, something he hadn't done in weeks. A wave of emotion washed over him. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears stinging his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Jen." His apology was met with silence, but her hand felt warmer. The slightest pressure, perhaps just a muscle reflex, seemed to squeeze back. His heart lurched. Was she waking up? He rushed to call a nurse, his pulse hammering. But by the time staff arrived, she was motionless again, though the doctor confirmed stronger vital signs. "She might be close to regaining consciousness," they said, fueling Leo's panic. Now the clock was ticking louder in his mind. If she woke, everything would unravel. Yet, seeing her alive, seeing the potential for his child to have a mother, stirred a buried sense of decency. For the first time, he considered surrendering himself, confessing everything to the authorities, to spare Jen another attempt on her life. Perhaps he could salvage his child's future, even if it meant sacrificing his own freedom. What do you think Leo will choose to do now? Confess or double down on his sinister plan? What's the most surprising twist you've ever seen, where a character makes an unexpected moral choice? Share your thoughts below. Just as Leo began to consider a confession, another bombshell exploded in his life. A close associate who managed his financial accounts discovered irregular bank transfers, authorized under Leo's name, transfers that funneled large sums to offshore entities. When confronted, Leo was baffled. He hadn't approved such transfers. A deeper investigation revealed Bianca's involvement. In the chaos of his personal life, Bianca had gained access to some of his accounts. She orchestrated the siphoning of money to shell companies, presumably to secure her golden parachute should things go wrong. Furious, Leo confronted her. They met in a secluded car park one night, their voices echoing off the concrete walls. "How dare you steal from me?" His voice was laced with disbelief and fury. Bianca rolled her eyes. "I only took what I deserved. After all, I'm risking everything. Do you think your empire was built just by your brilliance? I've smoothed over deals. I've introduced you to key investors." He grabbed her wrist, teeth gritted. "Don't turn it around. You stole from me." She wrenched free, her face contorting into a sneer. "And you tried to murder your pregnant wife. I don't think you're in any position to judge moral conduct." His anger flared. "You blackmailed me, pushed me to murder, and now you embezzle money. My money?" She laughed darkly. "With the evidence I've gathered, documents, recordings, I could sink you in an instant. Consider this a safety net. If I have to flee, I flee well-funded." Leo felt the ground shift beneath his feet. He realized how utterly trapped he was. Bianca had built layers of security. If he turned on her, she would produce damning evidence. If he yielded, she would bleed him dry. If he murdered her, the police would only see a suspicious pattern of violence. And yet, in his arrogance, she was driving him to a tipping point where he no longer cared as much about self-preservation as he did about justice, however twisted. That night, he went home trembling with rage. This woman had manipulated him, stolen from him, and threatened him. She was the living embodiment of the poison in his life. Meanwhile, Jen lay in the hospital, nearing a possible awakening. He knew he had to make a decision, and time was running out. The fateful day arrived with little warning. Jen's eyes opened. Doctors rushed to her room, performing standard checks. Slowly, she pieced together fragments of consciousness. Struggling to reconstruct reality, nurses urged her to remain calm, explaining she had been in an accident. When Leo received the call, his heart hammered like a drum of doom. He sped to the hospital, preparing for the worst. If she remembered what happened, he was finished. He found her propped on pillows, her face pale, eyes glazed, but alert. Her parents hovered by the bedside, tears of relief streaming down their cheeks. She blinked, focusing on him. "Leo!" Her voice was weak, a gasp. He nodded, stepping closer, swallowing the lump in his throat. She closed her eyes, struggling to recall. "I fell," she murmured. "Down the stairs." She frowned, searching for more details. He tensed. Each second felt like an eternity. If she uttered one phrase, "You pushed me," he would be dragged away in handcuffs. However, the memory was hazy. She described hearing a sudden noise, losing her footing, and then nothing. She couldn't clearly recall the push. Relief washed over Leo, but it was tinged with guilt. He recognized the moral depravity of hoping she would never remember. The doctor advised against pressing her, explaining that traumatic amnesia could persist or gradually fade. While her family rejoiced, Detective Inspector Carmichael appeared, wanting to take Jen's statement. She could offer little beyond the notion that it might have been an accident. Carmichael exchanged a knowing glance with Leo, as if silently confirming he still suspected foul play. In the days that followed, Jen underwent physiotherapy, regaining strength, but the question of memory loomed like a storm. Sometimes, mid-conversation, she would pause, frowning as if on the verge of a breakthrough. Leo lived with the constant dread that her memory could return in a flash. Unbeknownst to him, behind the scenes, Carmichael's investigation was closing in. Forensic specialists discovered partial footprints on the staircase indicating a forceful interaction. The detective also traced suspicious money movements pointing to Bianca's involvement, and all it would take was one slip, one moment of lucidity from Jen, to deliver the final blow. Finally, Bianca grew impatient. She had planned to escape with her stolen funds, but ongoing police investigations kept her tethered. She demanded a secret meeting with Leo at a deserted office building he owned, far from prying eyes. When Leo arrived, she was already there, pacing. Without preamble, she snarled, "I'm done waiting. Either you deal with your wife, or I'm turning everything over to the police, the voice recordings, the text messages, everything." He straightened his shoulders. "You set me up from the beginning, didn't you? You saw my weakness. This was all about getting my money, my business." She laughed. "You're not entirely wrong. You wanted me, and I gave you enough rope to hang yourself. Now, either you do what needs to be done, or I destroy you." His rage peaked, but something shifted within him. He was tired of being her puppet. "You know what?" he said, his voice trembling. "Go ahead. Release everything. I'm finished." Bianca's eyes blazed with fury. "You're lying!" She pulled out her phone, brandishing it menacingly. "I can ruin you with one tap." "Then do it," Leo challenged, feeling a strange calm settle over him. He realized that deep down, he couldn't live with this suffocating guilt anymore. Punishment would be better than continuing down this path. He thought of Jen. He thought of Lily, how close he was to losing them forever. The monstrous part of him, that had wanted freedom at all costs, now felt like a dead husk. He was ready to face retribution. Bianca's mouth twisted in a sneer. She tapped her phone, but before she could finalize anything, a group of police officers and Detective Inspector Carmichael burst into the room, guns drawn. "Metropolitan Police!" Carmichael barked. "Stay where you are!" Stunned, Bianca dropped her phone. The detective ordered officers to arrest both individuals. Leo raised his hands in surrender, a mix of dread and relief washing over him. The hour of truth had arrived. It turned out that Detective Inspector Carmichael had been monitoring Bianca for weeks. He had obtained her phone records, linking her to blackmail attempts and unusual bank transactions. He suspected an elaborate conspiracy to commit murder and cover it up. So he orchestrated the undercover operation, waiting until Bianca cornered Leo in a private setting. A hidden microphone in the room recorded her threats, references to dealing with Jen, and confessions that implicated her direct involvement. Bianca, realizing her precarious position, tried to flip the narrative. She claimed Leo was the mastermind, and she was merely a pawn, but the conversation they had just recorded told a different story. With enough evidence to arrest both of them, the police took them away. Leo, exhausted, made the first honest decision he'd made in a long time. He cooperated. He confessed to pushing Jen, detailing how Bianca manipulated him. While it didn't absolve him, it offered a clarity that might reduce his capacity to blame everything solely on her. Over the next few weeks, a sensational trial unfolded. Headlines screamed, "Millionaire developer and mistress charged with attempted murder." The public devoured the scandal, outraged by the alleged betrayal and violence. In court, Leo hung his head as prosecutors presented the evidence. Phone records, the cleaner's testimony, forensic analysis of the staircase, and Bianca's recorded threats. The final blow came when Jen herself took the stand, still recovering, but resolute. Although her memory of the fall was incomplete, she shared her experiences of Leo's changing behavior, the hidden messages she once glimpsed on his phone, how he had become increasingly distant and secretive. Bianca, for her part, launched a vicious defense strategy. She painted Leo as a violent, manipulative husband who dragged her into the scheme. However, the undercover operation recordings were damning. Her talk of sabotage, blackmail, and stolen funds painted her as a central figure. The jury watched as her flimsy justifications crumbled under cross-examination. The verdict came amidst a whirlwind of media attention. Both Leo and Bianca were found guilty. Leo, of attempted murder and conspiracy. Bianca, of conspiracy and complicity to attempted murder. Bianca's additional charges for financial crimes bolstered the odds against her. The sentencing day saw a packed courtroom. Jen, still fragile, sat beside her parents. She stared at the man she once loved and the woman who almost stole everything from her. The judge decried the cruelty and greed that led to the crime, handing down a harsh sentence. Decades in prison for both, with no early parole for Bianca due to her intricate manipulations and embezzlement. Leo, who had cooperated and shown remorse, received a slightly lesser sentence, but still a substantial punishment. As the bailiffs led them away, Bianca's veneer of confidence shattered. She cried, cursing Leo for failing her, cursing fate for betraying her. But this was karma, a retributive wave that spared no one. In that moment, it became clear that her plans, her illusions of grandeur, had crumbled like a house of cards. Her self-satisfied smile was gone forever. Leo, for his part, approached Jen and her parents, in shackles, his eyes filled with remorse. "I know you may never forgive me," he whispered, his voice broken. "I'm so sorry." His gaze lingered on Jen, who looked at him with tear-filled eyes. Tears not just of pain, but of disbelief that the man she once loved could become this monster. Then he was led into the cold corridor where cameras flashed and reporters shouted. His last glimpse of freedom was a whirlwind of lights, damning headlines, and the echo of Jen's heartbreaking silence. What do you think Jen's journey of healing and rebuilding her life will entail? And what's the most powerful example of resilience you've witnessed in a story or in real life? Share your thoughts below. In the months that followed, Jen slowly rebuilt her life. She regained her strength through physiotherapy, focusing on Lily, who grew healthier each day. The Hamilton empire, once synonymous with Leo's success, was dismantled in lawsuits and liquidation proceedings. Investors cut their losses, and new management took over or sold properties. Leo Hamilton's name was reduced to an emblem of cautionary tales in business circles, a grim reminder that success can turn to ash if built on a rotten foundation. Jen received heartfelt support from various charities, friends, and even strangers touched by her ordeal. She decided to focus her attention on philanthropic work, establishing a foundation for survivors of domestic abuse, honoring her own narrow escape. She found purpose in guiding others, ensuring they had resources and safe havens if they found themselves trapped with violent or manipulative partners. Occasionally she would be haunted by flashbacks, the sensation of falling, the moment of terror when she realized Leo had pushed her. She reminded herself that she and Lily had survived against all odds. That survival was a testament to a fierce inner strength she never knew she possessed. As for Leo, serving his sentence in a maximum security prison, he grappled daily with remorse. He attended group therapy, admitting his crimes to other inmates, many of whom scoffed at him for letting lust and greed lead him to destroy his own family. Letters to Jen went unanswered. It was her right to cut him off. He clung to the faint hope that one day, far in the future, he might be able to express his remorse in person, even if forgiveness awaited him not, and Bianca found prison life brutal. No one was impressed by her charms or manipulations behind bars. She tried to ingratiate herself with more influential inmates, but found she had little to offer except stories of a life that ended the day she was sentenced. She was rumored to spend her days in a mix of anger, regret, and denial, refusing to acknowledge her role in the tragedy that consumed them all. And so ends this story of betrayal and shattered dreams. A wealthy husband, seduced by greed and lust, believed he could control every piece on life's chessboard. A ruthless mistress, driven by cunning ambition, thought she would manipulate the world to her will. Both discovered that no fortune can shield one from the consequences of ill intentions. Jen's survival and Lily's new life are a testament that love can endure, even in the face of unimaginable betrayal. If this story gripped you, we invite you to reflect on its lessons. No amount of power or wealth justifies cruelty. We hope you'll share this cautionary tale with others. Like, comment, and subscribe to our channel so more stories, tales of triumph, tragedy, and the resilience of the human spirit can reach you. Your support allows us to keep storytelling alive, reminding us all of life's fragile truths.